my tongue. Here we go. How he said he living life as a gringo, where you question where you fit in every time you mingle. They say you do this with not enough that. My rapping is really bad. This life as a gringo.
Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of Life as a Gringo. I am Dramos. Of course, it is Thursday, so that means it's time for our Thursday Trends episode. And joining me on the show today, a friend of the show, basically from day one. She is the host of the new Okay La podcast. She's an OG member of the Just Be Social Club. Nicole Vega, how you feeling?
Hi, I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here. Excited, nervous.
Yeah, I mean, all the things, but this is amazing. Yeah. Full circle moment, because if I'm not mistaken, humbly, you were a listener of the podcast, right? Prior to you and I knowing each other. And then through the Just Be Social Club, we've gotten to know each other, and you now are a podcaster yourself. So, man, here we are.
Yeah, definitely full circle. Yeah, it feels like a little surreal being here because I mean, I know you've been like 3 years in, but it feels like just yesterday I just started listening. So
yeah, it's amazing how fast it all goes by. But you've been one of the active listeners. You might know her. I think it's as at Nicolosa_Vega, if I'm not mistaken. So I feel like you've been on the show before, but I think it's cool to see you doing your thing, and we'll get into the new podcast that you've just launched, you've been working on. But of course, we got to get to these stories this week. So we're going to talk about social media and this new ban that is happening in Florida for teenagers. I want to get your take on that. Donald Trump is back to his creative fundraising, if you want to call it that. So we'll touch on that. I'm throwing this to you last minute, but we added Latin American Music Awards 2024. The nominees have been announced, so I'm going to get your take on some music as well. And then, of course, we will talk about your podcast. But before we get into all the warm and fuzzy stuff, let's just dive into the nonsense, the BS, in a segment we call For the People in the Back.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
All right, so let's first and foremost start here with this social media ban in Florida, right? And I definitely want to get your take on this, but I have to say, for me, I'm just going to preface it by saying this might be one of the few times I agree with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on something. As he signed a bill on Monday to ban social media for children under the age of 14. Now, the legislation is titled HB 3. It also requires parental consent for children aged 14 and 15 to create social media accounts. It will not take effect until January 1st of 2025. Again, this is in Florida, and they're saying that this marks one of the most restrictive social media bans for minors in the United States. Republican Speaker Paul Renner, who championed the bill, said he expects social media platforms to, quote, sue, but, quote unquote, he plans to beat them. He also stated that the platform's addictive technologies could harm children's developing brains. So I've already kind of said my piece a little bit here. I want to get your take. I know you are both a teacher and a parent, if I'm not mistaken, right? So yes. You have a great, I think, perspective to give on this. What is your thoughts when you see this happening?
Oh, well, first, I'm not surprised it's in Florida, right? Like, right. I'm not. Second, I kind of call bullshit. I feel like Yeah, so I'm surprised that you are in agreement. Okay. I do understand, like, it is addictive and it's not good for children, but I mean, we need to stop trying to legislate parenting, really. And I just don't feel like, I know he's saying that it's like for mental kids' well-being, but I don't find that to be true. Like, if you're worried about kids' mental health, how about you make free mental health care for all youth, or right. I call bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree in that capacity. I think there's probably other bigger fishes to fry, if you will, if we truly are caring about other people, right? I think there are children going hungry all over the country, and school programs being defunded all over the country that could use far more funding to actually take care of those children. But I think, bullshit aside, and obviously all of this stuff is very much it's performance art at the end of the day. Modern politics is performative. I think I agree solely just because I'm so scared of social media, and I see what it does to adults, and I think it's fun. Like I was on social media probably around this age, like early stages of it. Maybe MySpace was around during that time. I think there were a couple other ones that were more like less social media-y, but maybe I don't know. I remember there's a couple old school ones. I can't remember the name off the top of my head that were like the pre, kind of the predecessors to the modern social media era, right?
Right.
And the thing is, there was a barrier to access because it wasn't like you had it on your phone where you can look at it all day. The entire school wasn't on it. All your friends weren't necessarily on it. Like I was one of the rare people who knew about it from like an older cousin or something like that, right? So if I did something on there, it wasn't like I had to go face the entire school the next day or that I could be bullied or something like that. Now, I think you bring up a great point about parenting, right? And where this then crosses the line into somebody telling you how to raise your kids. And that's something I obviously am ignorant to, not having children, but I do find it sort of fascinating that there is sort of that line. I mean, I'd love for you to kind of dive into that a bit deeper, kind of what your stance is a bit on that.
I mean, yeah, I agree with the sentiment. Like, kids should be monitored on social media. My kids are super young. They're 6 and 7. So
Yeah.
I'm not quite there yet, thank God. But
Right.
I do work in a high school setting. And so I see the impact of social media. And a lot of it is negative. And just as a woman, like the pressure,
Yeah.
as a grown woman. So I can't imagine for a child. Again, I just don't think we need to waste time and effort and tax dollars to parent. I mean, it wouldn't make a difference to me because my kids aren't going to have social media until I deem them responsible enough to have social media. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's I mean, yeah, it's tough because it's like, you want to leave it up to the parents, which I get that sentiment, like, let the parents parent their kids as they see fit. And I think there is this gray area of like how much is too much power to give to the government at the end of the day, right? Where you're really relinquishing a lot of control into the hands of these people who again are performing more than anything else. And to your point, when they're inviting lawsuits, the people paying for the lawsuits are going to be the taxpayers of Florida at the end of the day, having to fund the attorney fees when, Instagram and whatever, TikTok and all them decide to file these lawsuits if they do come into play. It's tough, honestly. I don't have the right answer at the end of the day. I wish I really had a more concise thing. I think, again, obviously there are worse things happening for kids, but I think social media is just fucking scary, even as an adult. And I feel like I harp on this a lot, but I feel like people are glossing over just how much of an impact it has had on just like everyday culture as a human being and the way that we all operate and sort of what we've normalized as a result of just having something like social media that really preys upon all of our insecurities, in the deepest way, and also is purposely designed to be incredibly addictive.
Yeah, that part. I guess I don't really even realize how addictive it is. I
Yeah,
mean, for myself, like
sure.
again, a grown ass woman. So I guess, yeah, I get what you're saying, and I guess what DeSantis is saying, but like, but yeah, I don't know. It is a slippery slope. Um, yeah, I don't have the right answer either.
Yeah, I think that what they fucked up on initially is like, unfortunately, because of the age demographic of those in power, they sort of slept on social media and allowed these companies to become incredibly powerful with zero regulation, right? And now it's become this everyday part of our life, and they're trying to play catch up, but it's like
Right.
it's gone too fucking far at this point. What it's legitimately controlling everything, every aspect. It controls the way political campaigns are run. It
Mhm.
is sort of the new television, it's the new media. Everybody, is every industry is figuring out how to do the social media thing, right? They are all bending to that. So it really has a stranglehold on every aspect of someone's life, and that's sort of where they fucked up at the end of the day. They really allowed this to get far bigger than and more powerful than it probably should have been. And also, I mean, I don't know how the fuck you regulate this really. I mean, there's going to be workarounds for it and things like that. I really don't even know how this in a practical sense would even work. But I guess to kind of surmise all that we're talking about, for you, you feel like things like this fall more in line with what the parents' responsibility is as opposed to anything else.
I do. And I just like want to reiterate, like, what is the point of this ban? Like,
Right.
if you're saying that it's mental health, worrying about kids' mental health, then let's address mental health. There's
Right.
way better ways to address mental health. Is it safety? Let's address safety. It's just, I feel like, look over here kind of moment.
Yes.
And yeah. So, and yeah, you're 100% right. We don't have the resources or the capacity even to address how big of an issue social media is. So we're just like scratching at whatever.
Yeah, I mean, but this is typical, like, political gamesmanship where they're like, you're absolutely right. It's like, look over here. Meanwhile, like, there's a fucking burning house behind you, and it's like the old card game, like the 3-card Monty type of thing, where they're kind of playing these tricks of the eye on you. And you're absolutely right. If mental health is a true concern for children, then why not find a way to have universal mental health care for children in school systems, right? And that be a policy, right? It's the same shit with like abortion and like they claim, being pro-life, but are able to ignore, gun violence and ignore people starving and ignore, kids not having the resources needed to live a healthy lifestyle. So I think that's probably the best way I can summarize it is piggybacking off of what you said is like, there is some truth here in sort of what is being said about the harmful effects of social media, but it's just another sort of performative band-aid and it means to ignore the much larger problem so that they don't have to spend more money or go after their NRA buddies when we're talking about guns or things like that, or the pharmaceutical companies when it comes to everything. I mean, it's just like obviously all this stuff is really just, again, it's performative band-aids, I think, at the end of the day, to piggyback off of kind of what you said.
Truly, yeah.
All right, well, another performative person here, Donald Trump. He has brought us the Trump gold sneakers. There was also an NFT. Back in the day, there was a Trump University that I forgot about. I read about that when I was reading this article. And now his latest ploy to his base is releasing a set of Bibles. So Donald Trump, this last week, started promoting a line of Bibles in partnership with country music star Lee Greenwood, whose song God Bless the USA has been played countlessly at the president's political rallies. Trump has, of course, encouraged his followers to spend the $60 on these Bibles. That doesn't include shipping and taxes. And the Bible is named the God Bless the USA Bible. Now, of course, this is all coming on the back of Trump owing close to $500 million in fines from New York City alone in fraud, even though his bond was lowered to $175 million, which he has to pay. But the latest ploy from Donald Trump to make money, and it's a Bible. Your thoughts on this?
I mean, I hope it goes without saying, obviously I fucking hate this man.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is genius. Like, it's marketing 101, because hypocrisy is literally the backbone of his right wing Christianity. So I mean, he knows what he's doing.
He is a master salesman. I have to give it to him. The man, like you said, knows what he is doing. He somehow, some way, always keeps like slivering out of whatever fucking hole he digs himself into, and his merch is fire. Like, I wish I was a Donald Trump fan. Like if I was a fan, I would be so souped. You can get Donald Trump everything, and it's fucking genius at the end of the day. And now it's obviously scary, because to me, I look at it and I'm like, man, he's really just putting on a masterclass on being successful on basically on the fact that if you have zero morals, how successful you could genuinely be. Like if you have no moral compass whatsoever, you literally could do anything you want in this world and not be held accountable, at least up to this point, right? Because this man really has zero shame whatsoever, and somehow, some way has all of these people tripping over themselves to support every crazy fucking idea that he has. And it's genius in the most scary way humanly possible, but it is incredibly genius.
Agreed. Yeah, it's just, I mean, as genius as it is for him, I am secondhand embarrassed for the man. Like, if you're broke, just say that. That's how I feel.
Right.
And this is like one step below him starting his own GoFundMe. That's
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I know that they touched on in the article about, him not even knowing anything about the Bible. Like,
Right.
you're as far removed from Christianity as it gets. So it's just, I mean, you have to laugh, otherwise it's so upsetting, really.
Well, 100%. The only thing you can do is laugh, because it's so like it's so illogical that as a logical person, you start to feel fucking crazy, because it's like, how am I missing something? Because this is so painfully obvious, like nonsense and BS. And like, I have, extended family who are Trumpers, who are conservative religion people, and will find ways to justify his actions or back him up or turn a blind eye. And it's like, I genuinely at times feel like I might be the crazy one when I have conversations with them, because it's like, how are you not seeing this, right? Like, it's literally right there, plain as day. Like, this isn't my opinion. It's like the man has shown you countless times who he is, but somehow, some way, it's like you totally are blind to it, and it's just wild to me, honestly.
I mean, yeah, he's just gaslighting us. Like, he's legitimate, literally gaslighting us. And I don't know, the people that, I mean, he knows his base. He knows his base. So I have no words, really. I'm just like, don't buy that Bible. Like, go buy a different Bible. Like,
I wish it was that easy. Unfortunately, it seems like people are going to shell out the $60 for the Bible. And like, also, not for nothing, like, and I don't say this in a disparaging way, most of his base are not wealthy people, but they're like finding ways to cough up $60 on this bullshit Bible or whatever, however much those sneakers cost and things like that. And like, that's also, I think, the scary part, is that a lot of people are not like him, who have grown up privileged, but are literally like putting their own livelihoods at stake on a regular basis just for supporting this man and his nonsense.
I mean, yeah, this man has shown you who he is over and over and over again, and that he doesn't care. I mean, he doesn't care that you're broke, and that this $60 could be detrimental to you and your family and your well-being. That he just has to pay some court fines, and that's all that he cares about. So
yeah, again, I at a loss for words. I feel like we just have to talk about it because it's so fucking ridiculous. We have to just say it out loud to make sure we're not going crazy. But not much of a moral of a story here. I wish, it's legitimately like the worst, lesson one could be taught, is that you could be a scam artist like this man and rise to the highest levels, known to humankind, essentially, which is a scary thought. But all right, we're gonna move on from the nonsense, the BS. We're gonna lighten it up a little bit. We'll get into our Mi Gente segment. Mi Gente. All right, so on the positive side of things here, we have an award show, Latin American Music Awards. They've announced the 2024 nominees. Now, this will take place April 25th at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas. This will air at 7 p.m. on Univision. Peso Pluma and Fade are leading the nominees with 12 nominations each this year. First and foremost, Ari, what's your thing on Latin music in general, or who are you a fan of? What's your take? What's your things?
I love Latin music. Okay, but I'm like, I feel like I'm very old for the trending music. Like, of course,
break that down.
I know who Peso Pluma is. I know Becky G. I know all the people, right? But I don't. Oh, is that so bad that I say I
No.
don't? I don't listen to them. I'm like on my Jenny Rivera, like,
Ooh.
you know, yeah, I like the old stuff. And so, but I'm happy for them because I support all Latino people. So
Of course. Listen, there's nothing wrong with that. You're on like the I'm trying to think who I saw on here because they have artist of the
what
year.
old person?
Yeah, I'm trying to find an old person for you. Hold on. It's no, I think somebody was getting honored. Was it? I think it was Yandel from We Sing Yandel. I'm not sure if
Oh
Reggaeton
my
is on that list.
God,
Yeah.
that is, yeah, okay. That just made
Okay.
my day. I fucking loved Wisin and Yandel when I was, you know, back in my prime.
Okay, perfect. So we're right there. So Yandel is actually going to get a special award during the ninth edition of this. Who else? Ricardo was it Montaner? I think is how you pronounce his last name. La Banda MS de Sergio
Oh shit, that's cool.
Lisa Raga. And then yeah, those are the ones that are getting special awards over here. I think I was supposed to interview Ricardo Montaner, but then he didn't want to speak English, I think, and my Spanish is trash, so that interview didn't happen.
Oh,
Yeah, but if it's okay. I'm not bitter about it or anything.
that would be so dope though.
I know. I was into it. I was totally cool with it. I think they also thought this is when I went to Miami and I was like hosting a backstage thing at the iHeart Festival. And no shade to it, but I think they think my Spanish is less than it actually is, like that I wouldn't be able to just like make it work. So yeah, shame on them for doubting me, whoever was doubting me on
Yeah,
that.
we're
But
not
yeah,
into
so
the, yeah. You need
yeah,
to brush up on your Spanish so that way he can come on
it's
your.
true. Listen, I do have a tutor. I have a virtual tutor, so I'm working on it.
Oh shit, that's what's
Yeah.
up.
I'm working out, or I might just escape to Puerto Rico for a year and come back just fluent in Spanish as my other
Ugh.
backup plan. So I would love to do that as well. But you know, we'll see. We'll see how it works out. Let's see though. Okay, so I was gonna ask you artist of the year, but you don't listen to any of these artists, so it's gonna be okay. It's I I'm gonna say the nominations for artist of the year just because
Okay.
actually you're gonna know some of them actually. Artist of the year, Bad Bunny, obviously, you know. Karim Leon, which I am not familiar with. Eslabon Armado, I'm not familiar with. Fade, yes. Fuerza Regida, Carol G, Peso Pluma, Raúl Alejandro, Romeo Santos. I'm not sure if you're a bachata fan.
Yes.
And then Shakira.
Oh yes. Who doesn't love
Okay.
Shakira?
You know what's interesting? This is a side conversation. I'd love to get your take. If you've been seeing the cringeworthy videos on J-Lo that have been going on TikTok.
I reposted some.
Okay, so you're familiar.
Yes.
Let's discuss this because Shakira has found a way to, I think, age gracefully. And when I say age, I'm not talking about looks wise or anything like that, but as an artist where it doesn't feel like she's trying to be keeping up with what's cool and hip. She just feels like a dope artist still, right? Whereas J-Lo, a lot of the critique that has been happening is people are being sort of calling her cringy because it feels like she's performing and trying to like keep up with what's hot or trying to give off this like facade of realness that just comes across as very inauthentic. What's your take? Like, what made you repost the J-Lo thing?
I mean, I've never really been a huge J-Lo fan. And I know I just said like I support all, like I love her career. I love her
Sure.
Selena. I just don't feel like she is a woman that's for other women. I've always kind of got that vibe from her. And she is cringy just because I think Shakira is like authentic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like she does music that's authentic to her. And I feel like J-Lo's just trying to do whatever it is that's gonna give, you know, bring her some source of income, which
Yeah.
can't hate the hustle, I guess.
Yeah, I mean it is there is something there's always been something off about J-Lo, I will say, right? And it hurts my heart to say that because she's Puerto Rican and from New York City. You know, like myself, and I think she's incredibly talented in many ways, and you have to give it up for her career. At the end of the day, she's had this incredible career in not only just music but acting and everything like that. She's a legend. But yeah, there always feels like this performative element. Like we don't really know who she actually is. Like, you know, she sort of is, to your point, opposite of Shakira, where she comes across as incredibly inauthentic. You know, it's like she's always putting on this show, this facade, almost of being untouchable, right? And I think you can't have it both ways, you know, where you're like untouchable and you are this sort of larger than life character, but at the same time you're trying to claim that you're still that same person from the block type of thing.
Yes.
Because I think it then just again feels incredibly inauthentic. And what's also interesting is like Beyonce is that character, right? She's larger than life. She is you know, not like the everyday person, right? She's like Queen Bee at the end of the day, right? She's obviously, but like she doesn't get that same critique because I think she presents herself in a far different manner. I feel like she doesn't feel like she's I think it's like posturing is really what J-Lo kind of tries to do almost. Whereas if you're gonna be like this sort of you know, larger than life icon, you kind of have to live in that world and that's sort of your persona and let people sort of meet you there. I don't know. I'm really just trying to analyze like what it is that I think people are like having this almost gag reflex to currently.
Yeah, I like the comparison that you made to Beyonce because I don't want to be eaten up alive, but I'm not a big Beyonce fan.
Of Beyonce?
I'm not a big Beyonce fan. Yeah,
right.
Because on the other spectrum, like I don't feel like she gives enough of herself. Like I don't know anything about Beyonce. Like
right.
But she does live in this world and she owns it, you know, like I'm kind of up here. I mean, she doesn't say that, but she's just not showing you her day-to-day life. And so I don't know. J-Lo just needs to like figure out which one she's gonna do and do it.
Yeah, yeah. I think also Shakira, we're bringing back that comparison. Shakira, like, because she collaborated with like Karol G, who's like a newer artist, you know, of this moment of this generation, and it
and
doesn't.
Cardi B.
Yeah, and Cardi B,
I
absolutely.
Loved it.
So it doesn't feel like she's like trying to like grab onto their success to kind of elevate herself back into the limelight. It just feels like she's just kind of like joining them where they are, where I feel like, I don't know, there's something about J-Lo that everything just feels forced about it.
Yes. I feel like she gives pick me.
Yeah.
And I think she's a Leo. She gives me Leo vibes. You know, like she made this whole ass documentary and
oh my God.
Have you watched it?
No, I can't bring myself to do it. I've seen enough clips on TikTok that I'm like, there's no fucking way that I would make it through an hour and a half of this shit over and over. It's bad. It's horrendous looking. And it's so it's giving like, you know, like it's like when somebody's like we all have one of those friends who's way too extra for their birthday and just like really just makes it this whole fucking thing and we're all just along for the ride, like, all right, this is what they do, I guess we're gonna just all shut up and like play into it for the night, you know. That's like what she is, but on such a larger scale, especially with this movie that she apparently like self-funded herself, you know. It's just it's so fucking it's so I want to be able to support her so badly, like, and I don't want to down talk it, but it's just so cringy.
Yeah, you're having like a visceral reaction to it.
Yeah. I really am. And it's because it's like, by the way, I think we're all cringy in our own way. We're all cringy to somebody, right? And I don't think you should hold back just for the sake of having mass acceptance. But like her cringiness is like cringy because it's not even cringy because she's being authentically her. It's cringy because she's like putting on this show that is so obviously not her. That's what makes it cringy. You know what I mean? So like that's where I'm like, okay, I think we could critique it because it's not like, you know, it's not like Britney Spears who's doing these weird dances, but it's like that's what she apparently does, like on a, you know, Wednesday afternoon. She just films herself in her living room dancing around, and that's her, right? And that's a little bit different. We can get
behind it because it's real.
Right, exactly. Whereas J-Lo, everything about it feels so like forced, you know, but at the same time trying to make you feel like it's not forced, right? That's what it is. It's like you're forcing it, but then you're trying to tell me that, oh, it's just all naturally happening and unveiling at this, you know, like this is not me trying to put forth a character. It's the real thing when we all can really see that it's so much bullshit, you know, layers of nonsense.
Yes, 100%. And I just need to say, keep the TikTok videos coming because they've just been giving me so much joy the last week and a half.
The parodies. Also, by the way, we're not just attacking a Latin one because Justin Timberlake has been falling into the same boat as well. Him and J-Lo have been hand in hand in like the cringe wars, I feel like, as well. I'm not sure if you've been on that bandwagon as well.
I haven't. For what? For what is he doing? I didn't even know he was relevant.
Yeah, because he just put out a new album that apparently like did horribly,
Shit.
And I guess a lot of people are saying the same thing where he's trying to, sort of be this relevant current artist and it's just not working for him. It's like people have the tides have changed for whatever reason, right? And then he's like bringing in sync into it, I think, to try to gain the nostalgia thing. And for whatever reason, it's just not clicking. And I think there was a lot of backlash about people saying that he basically made a career off of sort of his interpolation of black music, essentially, right? And now in today's day and age, there's it's very obvious. I think there's a lot less acceptance for that, and I think there are a lot more black artists doing it at a high level and mainstream, where it's like Justin Timberlake is irrelevant in comparison to those who are genuinely doing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I thought some of the I don't know what backlash, but was also because of the whole Britney Spears memoir and like how he did her so dirty. And yeah, I don't support that, man. And honestly, I never was like a huge pop person. So yeah, I don't follow him at all.
It's no harm. You don't even, listen, you're probably better off. It's one less Instagram trend you have to follow right now, or a TikTok trend that you have to follow. But yeah, I just think it's really interesting. I think even just in like the current climate, right? For all the shit that I give social media, one thing that's really interesting and I think like a positive thing, and it's evident when you see people having this reaction to J-Lo, it's like, I think we are kind of moving into an era where authenticity is sort of leading the way and is sort of what people are yearning for, right? After we've had, whatever, I guess a decade at this point of like, hyper perfect social media era. Now people are craving a little bit more realness. And I think some of these older pop stars from, like the 2000s are having trouble transitioning because their whole thing was built on this larger than life type of performance, and people are craving a bit more. And I think those who don't necessarily have an authentic bone in their body or don't know how to be, open and vulnerable and things like that, they're probably having a hard time making that transition into, the more authentic and vulnerable, I think, sort of trend that's going on in media in general.
Yeah, and that it makes me think because are we to blame also because or not, or just the industry in general, like maybe J-Lo doesn't know who she is because from this young age, she was told like, this is going to be your demographic and this is what you're going to sell to. And, when she was with P. Diddy, she was this way, and she was with Mark Anthony, she was this way. And so she doesn't have an identity. And then now on the, like, we're demanding one, figure it out. Who are you so we can like you or not like you? So
yeah, I think that's an interesting point as well. I think the entertainment industry was a lot different back then, where they were literally like these executives crafting stars, right, and like creating their whole personas, and yeah, to your point, I imagine it's hard to sort of grow up in that. You probably lost yourself somewhere along the way, and then now you're sort of everything that you ever did to be successful is like backfiring on you, and it's probably an incredibly scary place to sort of be. And she's grasping, I think, at straws to try and hold on to that identity, I guess, at this point that was created, and probably now is her, to your point, where she doesn't really even know who the hell she is at this point.
Yeah, now I feel now I'm over here feeling sad for J-Lo.
Maybe you got to make a reaction video where you showcase this perspective of the J-Lo cringe. Yeah. That might be a winning thing. And let's talk about your budding media career over here, okay? As you have launched the Okela podcast, which congratulations, I'm incredibly proud of you. I remember when you were talking about this, when we would all get together for the Just Be Social Club mastermind group, and you would express the interest in that, and now you are one of the few people in general, not just there but in life, who expresses an interest in something, puts in the work, and then actually goes out and does it, and then consistently does it. Because I think you just crossed 20 episodes or something like that from what I was. So that's not easy to do because a lot of people underestimate how much work a fucking podcast actually is. So yeah, tell us, I guess, about the podcast first and foremost. Like, what's the premise of it all?
Yeah, so it's a podcast that I do with my sister. We say like our whole thing is we're complete opposites, but we're exactly the same. So and then just our mission, I guess, is to kind of create dialogue within our community and provide information for people in a way that's genuine and authentic.
Sure.
And I guess the whole gist of it is that we're just like normal ass regular women, like there's nothing particularly special about us, I don't know. I just feel like we're very relatable.
Yeah.
And I want to share information with people, like how I would have these conversations with my sister privately. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
That's beautiful. So I wanna now pick your brain from the perspective of what has surprised you most about the podcasting game that you didn't expect when you were sort of conceptualizing the idea, because I think this is a great case study for people who are interested in it. And I always get asked about podcasting or DM'd about it. And I don't think people know what they are getting themselves into. So I would love for you to let me know some things that surprised you about podcasting.
Well, honestly, everything. Like, first, the time. I mean, I knew it was going to be time consuming, but just, I also have a full-time job. I'm a mom and a wife and all of these things. So trying to make time for that was really hard in the beginning. And now we kind of have a routine. And then I don't know shit about audio or technical stuff. So I had to figure all of that on my own. I'm YouTubing stuff and we're not perfect by any means, but it's just doing it, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. That's a great sort of tag or phrase to get from that is it really is, you just have to do it, right? It's it genuinely gets better over time just by proxy of you putting in the reps. And I think a lot of people get caught up in the perfectionism part of it, where they might listen to their favorite podcast, and then if it doesn't sound exactly like that podcast, they think theirs is complete shit and it just should be abandoned, or that they're just not cut out for it. And I think there are levels to it at the end of the day that people just have to allow themselves to sort of slowly get to. I mean, I think even if you listen to the first episode of this show to now, it's if you're, I mean, I'm more of an audio nerd, so I can tell you the audio quality was shit back then, because I was recording it in a dining room that wasn't sound controlled whatsoever, and I didn't know how to properly process or edit it at the time. So it's those sorts of things, you have to just be okay with it, and I think also it's I don't want to use the word failing, I'm using this loosely, but you have to be okay with failing publicly, and failing is in air quotes right now as I say that, but you have to be okay with it not being the pristine, polished version that you sometimes have in your head, and understand that consistency is always better than just obsessing over every little detail.
Totally. And yeah, I mean, we're, like I said, we're still learning.
Sure.
And yeah, if we waited for perfection, we wouldn't be consistent, or we wouldn't have ever started. So
yeah. And how is that with you're working with your sister like that? I'm curious.
Oh man, we've had so many podcasts that haven't aired because we're just I guess we're not as entertaining as we thought we were, or we're just on the verge of throwing blows. So
yeah.
But it's fun, and it gives us a reason to kind of make sure that we're consistent. She has to come over every week, and I mean, we're close anyways, but I love making that time for us to like just have adult conversations.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing as well, where a lot of people get so caught up on the end result, like of it becoming something, right? Like having listeners and figuring out ways to monetize it and things like that, which is all great. Those are all great goals to have in mind. But something I always constantly try to reiterate is like it also should just be something that like fills your cup a bit, right? That brings you joy in the moments that you do it. It's something that breaks you out of your normal routine, right? It's something creative for you to do, something for you to just have an outlet for your voice, for your opinion, you know, and that we all need that at some point. And I think a lot of people, because they're so fixated on the end result, don't realize that, like, you know, and I'm not saying this for your podcast or anybody out there who's just starting, like, at the bare minimum, if you just have an outlet that gives you joy for an hour or two a week, that you can just release that energy and, like, you know, scratch that creative itch, it's worth it at the end of the day. It doesn't matter if nobody is listening, or if a million people are listening. Like, if it brings you joy, it's already a success within that, right? I think adult life, we try to quantify how we spend our time with, like, you know, monetary things, right? How is it valuable? Is it making me money? Is it this, or else it's not worth it? And, like, just like, you know, as kids, we needed hobbies to break outside of our norm. I don't think as adults we lose that, but just like we get caught up in adult life and we think we no longer need those things or they're not useful. And really, I think there's a lot to learn from the way kids can sort of just play without having that grandiose vision in mind.
Yeah, I like that, what you said a lot. Because I found myself, the reason for the podcast was I just like didn't, I mean, taking it back to J-Lo, I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
I was just a mom and just a teacher and just a wife and just a chauffeur and a cook. And I didn't have anything that I felt was just mine.
Yeah.
And my sister's doing it completely by herself. She's a single parent. So her even more so than me.
Sure.
So this was just something that kind of gave us that joy.
Yeah.
Not that all those other things don't, you know, like, because that was like
poor kids and husband. Yeah, they're like, what the fuck?
They give me the most joy, but outside of that, yeah.
Amazing. You almost get yourself tripped up there. That's also part of the scary part about recording everything that you're doing is there's evidence when you fuck up or say something stupid. But all right, so people can check out the Okela podcast anywhere you find podcasts. It is O and then the Spanish word que, Q-U-E, la podcast. Where can people follow you and keep up with all you're doing?
So we're on Instagram, Okela, OQUELA .podcast. And we're actually, I just kind of organized a series of lives for the month of April. So you'll definitely want to check us out there. And yeah, we're excited if you want to go listen to us and all the shit we talk.
Do it.
Yes.
You got it. Just go check it out. Also, I think I saw one of the lives you're doing. Brenda, friend of the show, is going to be on one of the lives, right?
Yes, I'm excited. Yeah. I asked her and she was like, yeah, for sure. And she's so freaking busy. So I'm like thrilled that she said yes.
Yeah. But this is the other thing too, that I'll like put a pin on what we're talking about. Like, even just, you get to connect with other interesting fucking people by doing the podcast, right? Like, and it doesn't always have to be the most famous person in the world or whatever. It's just really cool to be in community with other people, to like have access to conversation with other people that you find to be interesting, right? And that's like a gift again in itself, is to be able to sit down, even if it's just virtually, and just have a conversation with somebody that you find to be interesting, and like the, you know, sort of inspiration or just I don't know, the human need for having good conversation, like all that is so tied into this as well, that it's, the benefits are so much bigger than listenership or money at the end of the day, you know. I want to always harp on that, because I know it's tough to start out from scratch, and then you're like, you know, putting the pressure to get listeners and all these different things, and I think you end up forgetting all of the positives that are coming out of you just sort of giving your all to this project at the end of the day.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, it's so good just to connect, and I think that's like where we put a lot of the weight, like the purpose of the podcast. Just, we want to talk to people.
I love it. Love it. Well, Nicole, it is amazing to have you on the show. I am loving this full circle moment right here. Congrats on starting the podcast and all the work that you've been putting in. It's just beautiful to see. It's inspiring to me to see your growth and all that, to have you on the show. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. I really just want to carve this little time out to say thank you. I truly do feel like you inspired this change in me. Like, I did all the work. I understand that, but just you having your platform, and I just typed in like Latino podcast or Latina podcast, and you popped up, and I've been listening ever since. And just seeing a space where I felt like I belonged has really been transformative for me. So I really want to thank you for doing that.
Thank you for sharing. I was having a mild panic attack accepting this compliment, but thank you so much. I'm receiving it. I'm taking it in. All right. I'm not going to brush it off. I really do genuinely appreciate that. And yeah, it's always nice to be able to connect with people. And I appreciate your support that you've given me along the way. And I think it's just sort of, I don't know, it's just a reminder of how important it is to sort of express your interests to the world and put yourself out there, because you never know where it's going to lead you, or the sort of circles or communities that you'll find yourself in as a result, and sort of the joy that it's inevitably going to bring you just by being able to connect with other like minds. So yeah, it's beautiful. So thank you so much, and great to have you here on the show. Of course, we'll do it again sooner rather than later. But thank you for making your podcast debut, your Life as a Gringo debut, I should say, on today's show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Man, big shout out to my guest this week, Nicole Vega, for hopping on the show. Just amazing, man. And by the way, Nicole got on the show because she actually just asked and threw it out there and said, hey, if you ever need a guest for Thursday Trends, I would love to do it. And here we are. She's a guest on the show. So, as they say, closed mouths do not get fed. And that's why she is on the show. I'm so proud of her, so happy with all that she's accomplished and the growth that's happened over the last year or so of me really getting to know her. Just amazing to see. So beautiful stuff. Loved having her on the show. Shout out to the entire Just Be Social Club as well, which will be opening back up end of April is the target date. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, you could be a part of it as well, our little growing community that we have. With that said, I want to get y'all's take on one of the topics that we were talking about today. We'll do that for our Ask a Gringo segment.
Ask a Gringo!
I have a question. All right, so the story I wanted to get y'all's take on, because I just find it really interesting, and I want to see if maybe Nicole and I are on an island by ourselves, but J-Lo and all the hate that J-Lo has gotten as of late is fascinating to me, particularly on the internet. So I'm going to read some of the responses I got. Let's see here. At Talia Falcon says, apparently her journey to success wasn't genuine. She'd steal people's songs all the time. Also, she can perform, but people claim she can't sing. I love how Talia said people claim she can't sing instead of maybe saying herself that that she can't sing, that J-Lo can't sing. Throwing a little shade, but claiming it's coming from other people. I see you, Talia. You're not fooling anybody, but you're learning quickly. Your pop star training is working out, where you are not going to get yourself in unnecessary drama, and I respect that. But yeah, I think that's actually interesting, the argument about her stealing songs. But what's fascinating to me is this is legitimately just pop music 101. This is what happens. Like, most of your favorite pop stars don't actually write their own music, right? They're presented songs. I mean, and this is anybody, like, for the most part, or they have, a hand in sort of what the topics of conversation are in the writing process, but they're not really writing it themselves. They have a team of writers or a songwriter that they're specifically working with, so that's very common. I know a lot of people sort of say how she stole like a lot of Ashanti songs early on, and I don't know if stealing is the right word. I think it's just the nature of the industry. A lot of times you have an artist who, like Ashanti, maybe before she blew up, wasn't a household name but wrote a great song, and the label or producers are like, hey, let's give it to Jennifer Lopez, who's a gigantic star, and this song could be a hit, because with you right now at the level your career is at, it probably won't be a hit, right? So that's sort of the idea, but that's a story as old as time. I mean, anybody, you know, I mean, shit. Justin Bieber, Love Yourself, that song was written by Ed Sheeran, you know, and then given to Justin Bieber. Like, shit like that happens all the time. Now, is she Jennifer Lopez the world's greatest singer? No, I don't think so. She's a great performer, though. And so is Britney. And that's basically what Britney Spears built a career off of as well. So she's not the only one. She's a star. She's had great songs back in the day and put on a hell of a show. So I think that's sort of what it is. And people, of course, are going to hate on that. What I also love is people in my DMs coming to her defense. I think it's absolutely amazing. Let me see. The homie Andrew Boriga said, if you need someone to come fervently to her defense, I'll send my mom your way. She'd be ready to fight people over J-Lo's name. That's amazing. You see, so it's not just, everybody doesn't just hate her. Obviously, Jennifer Lopez is a star. Plenty of fans. People love her. People fuck with her. I think particularly of a certain generation. I just think there's some sort of disconnect between the younger generation or current, you know, social media climate and Jennifer Lopez, you know, where she, I think people just don't necessarily respect the history. I think that's also what happens. We also could be, I think to a degree, prisoners of the moment. We forget just how big of a star Jennifer Lopez was in both music and film when she was at the top of her game. Like, if I'm not mistaken, she was like the first person to have a #1 movie and #1 album in the same week or something like that, or at the same time. So she was a gigantic star in her day, still a huge star, but like, you know, a trend-setting star at the you know, peak of her career. So I think we forget that just a little bit. At Yesy_yes says, who's hating on J-Lo? ? Oh, nah. So we got some J-Lo lovers out here, okay? I mean, again, I want to defend J-Lo so bad. I respect the shit out of her. I genuinely do. But she always has struck me as like a bit inauthentic, and I thought it was just me because I feel like I'm hypersensitive to that because, you know, authenticity is kind of my thing, and I felt like I'm always a bit hypersensitive to people who it feels like they're putting on a show always, or a performance, and not really just letting themselves hang loose, you know. And even in media, you know, I feel like weird divulging a lot of stuff, but like, you know, I think certain artists, when they walk in the room, because I've been in the room with Jennifer Lopez before, and when she was giving an interview, and yeah, I think there is sort of this performance element of they are above. I don't want to say they're above, but they come from a different time period where you didn't open up about your deepest and darkest emotions, secrets, and vulnerability, right? In today's climate, someone goes on a fucking Jay Shetty podcast and spills their heart, basically, right? Or goes on the Breakfast Club and cries or whatever, right? You know, and back in the day, that wasn't really the norm, you know? It was, you know, it was just like very sort of even more superficial than it is now. It was very much just like, let's talk about the music or the project that you're promoting, right? Or, you know, sort of the very superficial aspect of your career, very like, let's protect the pop star image type of thing. And again, that's an old mentality. And I think from my perspective looking in, that was a bit of what I sort of noticed, sort of being in a room where Jennifer Lopez was being interviewed. It was a lot of that like old school, let's protect the pop star image sort of mindset coming in there, and aura that was happening, especially with the team around her. And again, it's no shade that you know, operating from a different time, but I just think that doesn't translate into today's sort of hyper-connected, hyper-vulnerable day and age that we live in. With that said, thank y'all so much for participating in that conversation at DJ Dramos on Instagram. I just want to get y'all's take on that, see if I'm the only crazy one. I love how we just kind of went there randomly. Now, let's tie everything we talked about today in a neat little bow in a segment we call Conclusion Stew.
Time for Conclusion Stew.
All right, so again, big shout out to the homie Nicole Vega, host of the Okela podcast and OG member of the Just Be Social Club. So amazing to have her on the show today. A little full circle moment is a beautiful thing. Now to recap all we talked about today, this Florida social media ban for children under the age of 14. Yeah, I mean, I struggle with this, and I like my knee-jerk reaction is like, awesome, amazing. But then, like, as I've kind of have been like digesting it a little bit, I'm not flip-flopping on my opinion per se, but it is kind of like scary to be like, all right, well, like, are we giving the government just a little bit too much power here over things that are kind of menial or could be personal to a parent's decision rather than like needing the government to step in, right? And I think my initial reaction was like, yeah, social media I think is incredibly damaging for teenagers and younger. I think it's incredibly damaging for adults, whether we realize it or want to admit it or not. But I can imagine as a teenager who, you know, is not as emotionally intelligent, it can be a very scary sort of place to have to grow up in front of, right? And a lot of pressure. I think Nicole brought that up as well as a woman, and you know, beauty standards and all these different things as well, and just so much that could fuck with a kid's mental. But to her point, I think we can have that sort of back and forth about, is this the government overstepping? I think at the end of the day, to what Nicole was saying was, if they're really interested in people's mental health, specifically children's mental health, then provide mental health resources. Make that something that you are championing. Why does that word sound so weird? Championing. Make that something you're getting behind, if you will, instead of sort of this performative thing where you know it's going to draw headlines. And that's probably why they're doing this, right? It's going to draw a lot of headlines about, you know, banning social media rather than like investing money into mental health resources, right? That's not as sexy of a headline that's going to get reposted on the blogs, and they know that. And that's the sad part, is the sort of performance element that really just provides Band-Aids, because unfortunately the Band-Aids provide sexier headlines, right? And are far easier than actually creating substantial change. So I think that's what we're seeing a lot of in stuff like this. And the Trump Bibles, I mean, you know, I was seeing, of all people, I came across this article, or this post from Jake Paul on TikTok. I think it was a clip either from one of his podcasts or him doing an interview talking about the Trump Bibles. And shockingly, he had a great perspective of sort of talking about how Trump is now coming across as just like this sleazy salesman that is trying to make a quick buck at all turns, right? And almost coming across as desperate, right? Not moving from a place of strength. And I think that's totally right. I think he's just throwing his name on a bunch of random shit and doing it during a time when he obviously needs to be raising money. It's obvious what he's doing. The only problem is that his supporters, I think majority of them, are not going to see it that way. They are kind of too far in. They've drank too much of the Kool-Aid, and they're not going to see him as like the sleazy salesman who's just like a used car salesman trying to, you know, get a quick buck on you. Unfortunately, I think they're all too deep in to kind of recognize just how weird and just gross this whole thing is, particularly when you're using people's faith against them. I think is particularly disgusting. And unfortunately, much like we talked about today, I think most people who are still, you know, supporting him and spending their hard-earned money, even when they're not in a position of you know, crazy monetary privilege, I think, unfortunately, they are sort of just too far gone at this point if they haven't, you know, sort of come to Jesus, if you will, to keep it in religion. Now, mi gente segment, we talked a bit about the Latin American Music Awards. Shout out to Yandel, one of my favorites growing up, who's going to be honored with a special award. It's happening April 25th in Vegas. It'll air on Univision. Peso Pluma and Fade leading with the nominations with 12 each, which is absolutely amazing. It's cool to see, like, the next class of artists coming through and killing it. And Bad Bunny's still obviously relevant, people like that, but then you have like Peso Pluma representing for the Mexicans and just representing a whole other class of people. And Fade is from Puerto Rico, if I'm not mistaken. I feel like I oftentimes will claim an artist that I like just to make them Puerto Rican. I'm becoming like my father. But yeah, I think Fade is from Puerto Rico. I'm just Googling it to make sure. Oh, Fade is actually from Colombia. You see, this was one of those instances where I wanted to claim fate as one of our own. So he is from Colombia. I love Colombia. Shout out to Colombia. But yeah, he's one of my favorite artists currently, and I wanted him to be Puerto Rican so badly. So that's my own personal bias right there. So big shout out to him, though, leading in those nominations, getting 12 nominations along with Peso Pluma, which is crazy. And yeah, Artist of the Year, I'll give my take. I don't know if I did give my take on that. I would say Artist of this last year, for me personally, you have to go Karol G. I think Karol G crossed over into superstardom beyond even just the Latin market. I think the same way Bad Bunny did that maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever it was, essentially, with Un Verano Sin Ti. When that came out, that really just crossed over into mainstream superstardom success for him. I think Karol G did very much that for herself in this last year, so I would have to give it to her personally. Humbly, that's my opinion. I don't vote or know how the voting does work, but yeah, that's just my humble opinion here on this podcast. And we randomly got into J-Lo. Again, I just think authenticity. I will sing that till the cows come home, if that is the saying, right? I personally just think in today's day and age, we are all so sick of the fake shit that we're starving for real people, real connection, real human beings to support with our time, energy, and money, right? I think that social media has exhausted us of seeing perfection all the time, every day, all day, every day, right? These perfect IG models and amazing lifestyles and rich bros with awesome cars and blah, 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 blah. My life is so amazing. Life is so amazing. And it's incredibly unrelatable, but it's exhausting because I think we've all initially at this point, or I say not initially, but now have gotten to the point where we realize it's all bullshit. We've seen enough of these people, these stars, or these, whatever content creators be called out on their bullshit, and their lives aren't what they've made them out to be. So I think we're all sort of sick of the fake shit. We want somebody we can relate to that doesn't make us feel like our life sucks or that we are a bum in comparison. And I think a lot of, again, the legacy artists are having trouble sort of making that switch because they've grown up during a time and came up during a time where they had to put on this sort of picture-perfect pop star persona. And for some of them, they're probably incredibly uncomfortable having to be vulnerable and so intimate in the way that today's social media era sort of demands of pop stars and tabloid culture and all of the above. And internet culture, podcasting, all these different things, these different avenues for people to sort of be in the loop of what you're doing. And I think it's probably incredibly uncomfortable. A lot of them, again, didn't grow up or didn't come up in their career having to open up in that way to their fans. And I think it's probably a weird transition for many people. So that's my take on it. Again, I know we had a lot of opinionated responses to J-Lo. I still think she's an absolute legend. You can't take away the amazing career that she's had. I think she's sort of really indirectly and sometimes directly done a great job at just being Latin representation, right, in a world that didn't do that at the time when she was popular, particularly as somebody from New York, as a Puerto Rican. It was great to sort of see her, especially during like the On the Six era. I think it was amazing. The music was fire during that time as well. And then even, more recently, the Super Bowl performance to me is still legendary. It goes down as my favorite one of all time with her, Shakira, Bad Bunny, and J Balvin. So I just think just beautiful, beautiful stuff in that way. I think she's a legend. She's cemented that, regardless of if she's become the internet's new favorite meme or whatever it is. Still a legend, still an amazing career, just different at the end of the day. Now, with that said, thank y'all so much for tuning into today's episode. I will catch you on Tuesday with a brand new show. Until then, stay safe, have an amazing weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.